This is Jane Goodall, world-renowned primatologist and foremost expert on chimpanzees. At the start of her long and colorful career, Mrs. Goodall had long considered chimps to be nicer in behavior when compared to humans, but what she didn't know was that she was about to witness the first documented war among the animals. While researching this topic, we found quite a number of discrepancies between sources, so when these arose, we simply referred to the direct writing of Mrs. Goodall herself. We also found that as it can be difficult to keep up with all the key figures involved, we decided to illegally download a bunch of NFTs from Google Images and create character cards, so it's easier to keep track of everyone. On July 14th, 1960, Jane Goodall would arrive at Gombe National Park in Tanzania, a place where she'd end up living for the next 30 years. Throughout the 1960s, she took notes and named and chronicled the lives, ambitions, and the power struggles of the community of chimps that called the range home. However, in 1970, things started to change, as formerly childhood friends would become hostile and even start throwing hands. This tension among this once friendly chimp community is believed to have started with the death of the beloved senior chimp, Leaky. As it turned out, the great Leaky was something of a politician chimp, who up until now had kept the North and South chimps within the park united, but upon his death, things were never quite the same. The community really took a turn for the worst with the death of the cherished former alpha chimp, Mike, who was bodied into abdicating his chimp throne by a big brutish dictator chimp named Humphrey. This is when the group began to splinter. Although he had tentative control, Humphrey immediately had challenges to his position on account of being an absolute dickhead. The population was unhappy with Humphrey, since after taking power, he abolished the chimp constitution, declared a state of chimp emergency, and promised to hold elections within 18 chimp months. This is of course preposterous, as everyone knows chimps live under a constitutional monarchy, sanctioned by the chimp god, Glorvo. Whatever the case, the group had become divided, and Humphrey was now in a shaky position of power. As he would find out, it would take more than a huge mass of muscle and a high intimidation level to keep the chimps united. Two brothers by the name of Hugh and Charlie would quickly grow sick of Humphrey throwing his weight around, and along with 4 other males and 3 other females, they would split off from Humphrey's kingdom altogether. The once unified community would now be split into Humphrey's northern faction and the southern separatists, led by the 2 ambitious brothers. Humphrey's rule would be short-lived however, as the north eventually gave way to Figan, a Machiavellian chimp with terrifying intelligence and cunning. Although physically strong, Figan's real power came from his ability to negotiate alliances with other males, and lucky for him, his brother in the tribe, a chimp named Fabian, was known as something of a kingmaker, formally helping Humphrey ascend to the throne. Figan was good at making friends, had a strategic mind, he wasn't above fighting dirty, and he was now the king in the north. On January 7th, 1974, a party of 6 adults from the northern faction, led by King Figan, would come across an isolated male from the southern separatists, named Godi, and proceed to beat him to death. The exact details of the attack would likely demonetize us until the end of time, but you could probably imagine what 6 male chimps could achieve if they all worked together. What should be understood is this wasn't a regular scuffle between competing males. Rather, this was a premeditated murder, which was celebrated on the spot by chest beating and wild howls. A terrifying cacophony of noise that proved to be the declaration of war. In truth, although experts call it the 4-year Gombe Chimpanzee War, the entire conflict was about as one-sided as wars come. King Figan would slowly expand his northern kingdom into the territory of the southern folk, and over the next few years, would opportunistically murder any separatists caught out alone. D was the second chimp to fall, followed by Hugh, one of the brothers who founded the southern group. Goliath was next to perish, which was perhaps the saddest case of all. For context, Goliath was the first chimp in Gombe National Park, recognized as an alpha male, but his time on top began when King Figan was only 8 years old, and he had become content with living a more peaceful life in older age. In fact, Goliath had remained relatively friendly with those who remained in the Northern Kingdom, a kindness which was not reciprocated when they later beat him to death. As you might imagine, this string of killings left a mental toll on Jane Goodall, who had witnessed so many of these brutal acts of violence. In her memoir, written decades later, she described the killing of Goliath to be particularly heartbreaking, as she almost couldn't believe that King Figan would be able to continuously hit his quivering and stricken body when he once considered him a childhood hero. Goliath was murdered by those he had once tried so hard to protect and mentor, and his death was as unceremonious as it was brutal. With Goliath gone, the southern folk were left with only 3 male chimps, but the Northern Kingdom wasn't about to slow their vicious momentum. The next attack was on Charlie, the second brother who founded the would-be utopia in the south, and would be attacked so unexpectedly, he'd never even get the chance to fight back. After his death, Willy Wally, a chimp already crippled by polio, disappeared never to be seen again, leaving just 1 male left in the south. For a whole year, young Sniff would be the lone male in the south, and observers had no idea what was to become of him. Some suspected that he might be able to escape to another chimp community. Others thought he would be accepted back into Figan's kingdom, and more still, pondered whether he would finally embrace his Sigma male grind set and start selling NFT portraits of himself to tech bros the world over. In the end, however, he would meet the same fate as the rest of the separatists and be beaten to death by a Northern war band. The female chimps would be met with similarly cruel fates, either being killed, disappearing, or becoming enslaved to the Northern Kingdom. This does bring into question whether this conflict would be better described as a systematic genocide, as assuming the southern folk could be described as founding their own identity or nationality in the context of a chimp society. It wouldn't be hard to argue that the North deliberately intended to wipe them out. Of course, perhaps a more relevant question is whether it really matters, but when this event is widely considered to be the first documented chimp war, it stands to reason that these intelligent animals would be capable of all the horrific shit humans have done throughout history. The only real difference between us and these apes is there's no Geneva Convention for chimps. After the war ended, nearly half the original chimp population had been wiped out, and the Northern Kingdom would be stretched too thin to consolidate the territory gained in the south. Much like most fights in Apex Legends, the northern faction was third-partied by a much larger clan who hadn't taken part in the 4-year conflict, and King Figan had to pull back to his established territory. At the time, some scientists accused Jane Goodall of assigning the chimps human traits, or theorizing that her very presence had created violent conflict within a usually peaceful society. However, it was later discovered that chimps in their natural state tend to wage war, and in 2018, a study was published which concluded that the Gombe Chimp War was likely the consequence of 3 high-ranking males competing for power, a situation made more volatile by a scarcity of fertile females. Quite fortunately, viewers won't ever run into the same problem with the help of today's sponsor. As a little public service announcement, Valentine's Day is coming up quicker than you think, and viewers intending to give their significant other a good time should probably invest in having a nice cock. With Manscaped's Performance Package Kit, you'll have everything you need to impress that special someone, and between you and your penis working as a team, they're bound to fall in love with one of you. The crop preserver will keep your sack fresher than a delicious Subway sandwich, the weed whacker will keep those nose hairs more absent than my ex-wife, and the Shears 2.0 will keep those nails cleaner than Danny DeVito, covered in hand sanitizer. The flagship of the pack is the Lawnmower 4.0, which is a waterproof trimmer, rumored to be quiet as a mouse, and safer than an RGB gaming mask. You never know when your cock might be expecting company, but with Manscaped, you'll always be ready for a surprise doctor's appointment, a date with that special someone, or a change room scuffle with the homies. As always, checking out with the code on screen will get you 2 free gifts, 20% off, And free international shipping. Manscaped. Don't say Uncle Swag never did anything for your penis.